Hello, reading room. How are you? We are here, nearly 1 o'clock. No big deal. I could have all these classes in the morning. Yeah, not really. Let's get started. It is day 299. It is January 15th here in the reading room. Thanks so much for joining me. Hold on, I need to tie my shoe here. Not that it's an emergency, but you know how it is when you see something and then you get distracted by it. And you can't stop thinking about it. Why doesn't this ever tighten up like it's supposed to? Okay. We are starting chapter 9, Michaud's Films. Celebrating Blackness. Conceiving, so it sounds like there's something that this author does like about cinematic black. Conceiving of his work in independent filmmaking as counter-hegemonic cultural production, Oscar Michaud worked doggedly to create screen images that would disrupt and challenge conventional racist representations of blackness. Stating his political agenda in the January 24th, that's my sister's birthday, my other sister's birthday, 1925 edition of the Philadelphia Afro-American newspaper, Michaud declared, "I have always tried to make my photoplays present the truth, to lay before the race a cross-section of its own life, to view the colored heart from close range. My results might have been narrow at times, due perhaps to certain limited situations which I endeavored to portray, but in those limited situations, the truth was the predominant characteristic. It is only by presenting those portions of the race portrayed in my pictures in the light and background of their true state that we can raise our people to greater heights." Though Michaud aimed to produce a counter-hegemonic art that would challenge white supremacist representations of blackness, he was not concerned with the simple reduction of black representation to a positive image. In the spirit of oppositional creativity, he worked to produce images that would convey complexity of experience and feeling, arguing that before we accept to see ourselves featured on the silver screen as we live, hope, act, and think today, men and women must write original stories of Negro life. Though he did not conceive of his work as documentation, making the camera mirror life, he did want black folks to see images on the screen that were not stereotypes or caricatures. Michaud endeavored to go beyond the realm of the ordinary. It is this vision that gives his films an element of intrigue and delight that fascinates. Ironically, his use of melodrama has been misunderstood by contemporary viewers who see this style as undermining cinematic capacity to convey complexity. Michaud did not suffer from an error of insight. In the essay Melodrama Inside and Outside the Home, Laura Mulvey explores the subversive possibilities emerging from the location of melodrama, drawing on the melodramatic imagination by Peter Brooks. And this is a quote. Peter Brooks shows how the melodrama's aesthetic strength lies precisely in its displacement of the power of the word. This low cultural form could reflect on human struggle with language and expression and thus influence the development of romantic theater. The aesthetics of the popular melodrama depend on grand gestures, tableau, broad moral themes, with narratives of coincidence, reverses, and sudden happy endings organized around a rigid opposition between good and evil. Tableau would be blank slate. Characters represent forces rather than people and fail to control or understand their circumstances, so that fate, rather than heroic transcendence, offers a resolution to the drama. While the aesthetics of melodrama evolved for a non-literature audience, the style throws doubt on the adequacy of speech to express the complexities of passion. A whole terrain of the unspeakable can thus be depicted. That's the end of that quote. Michaud used melodrama in precisely this way. Approaching his work from a standpoint enables the contemporary viewer to see more clearly how his films work to transgress boundaries, to offer perspectives, different takes on Black experience that can be found seen in no other cinematic practice during his day. Writing about Michaud's unique vision in her essay, that's not the word, Changeling, Race, Sex, and Property, and Oscar Michaud's God's Stepchildren, critic Marilyn Jimenez says of his films, quote, there is in them the true mark of the auteur, the unmistakable stamp of a personality, the obsessions of a visionary. This all generally under the surface. For the distinctive mark of a Michaud film is the relationship between text and subtext, between what the film says and what it really says. In so doing, Michaud, more than any other filmmaker, embodies the ancient characteristic of Black artistic creation, the trope of reversal, the use of indirections to find directions out. Michaud, fascinated by what I call a politics of pleasure and danger, focused both on racialized sexual politics as they inform the construction and expression of desire between Black heterosexual couples, as well as interracial sexual bondings. Though he was involved in a romantic liaison with a white woman in South Dakota, Michaud felt marriage to her was tantamount to a betrayal of his race. Desire expressed sexually, a constant theme in his films, became a site where loyalty and solidarity are tested. Much of his work explores passions aroused in response to acts of betrayal, attempting to express and convey the particular forms desire and courtship take within a racial context of color, caste. A society where Black male and female sexuality is constructed as dangerous and threatening, Michaud's work offers an extended cinematic narrative of Black and sexual politics. Focusing on womanizing and vamping, Michaud's work exploits conventional constructions of good and bad sexuality as he simultaneously toys with the idea of transgression. The 1932 Michaud film, 10 Minutes to Live, problematized the location of Black heterosexual pleasure within a rigid color caste system that makes the desired object, the body most resembling whiteness. In a series of narrative reversals challenging assumptions that whiteness, light skin, should be interpreted as signifying innocence, the question of who is good or bad is rendered far more complex than the issue of color. Calling into question the Western metaphysical dualism which associates whiteness with purity and blackness with taint, the subtext of Michaud's seemingly simple melodrama interrogates internalized racism and the color caste system. Now, what an interesting little twist right there, right? I mean, all that I hear right there is, well, exactly what was said. Challenging white pure is good and Black is tainted. That's an easy subtext, isn't it? That's such an easy subtext. It's hard for people to swallow, though, isn't it? I mean, even when you take a look at, it wasn't Jumanji, but it was something like that I talked about that had Jamie Foxx in it. There was still little to be said that was so wrong with Leonardo DiCaprio's character. Right? You didn't hate him like you should have. And I don't know why. So what I'm saying is that is not as easy as it seems to be able to get something in the movies that portrays whites as being tainted and Black as being pure. I mean, think about that today. I could see it back in the day. I could see it in a slave film similar to that one I'm talking about, right? But as the white woman being tainted and the black woman being pure, I'm thinking of that one film where they were both prostitutes, and the one black prostitute was the good one, and the white one was just down and dirty. I can't remember what the name of that movie was. You know, it's close to a B movie, except for the main black character, female, is so darn gorgeous. She couldn't be in a B movie if her life depended on it. If you know what I mean. She might not appreciate that, but only because it's not true. Desire expressed sexually, a constant theme in his films, becomes a site where loyalty and solidarity are tested. Much of his work explores passions aroused in response to acts of betrayal, attempting to express and convey the particular forms desires and courtships take within a racial context of color caste, a society where black male and female sexuality is constructed as dangerous and threatening. I already read all that. Did I read it all the way to toys with the idea of transgression? Michaud's work exploits conventional constructions of good and bad sexuality as he simultaneously toys with the idea of transgressions. In 1932 film, 10 Minutes to Live problematized the location of black heterosexual pleasure within a rigid color caste system that makes the desired object the body most resembling. All right, I already read that. Superficially, 10 Minutes to Live conforms to the cinematic paradigm already set by Hollywood and gives his audience a bad guy, addressing the black public's need to have race movies reproduce aspects of white mainstream cinema that denied their presence. Michaud incorporates into his work familiar melodramatic narratives, just as the white master narratives of cinema insisted that plots be structured around conflicts between good and evil. This became the usual ground of conflict in race movies, responding to what Clyde Taylor calls the master text and the Jedi doctrine, an insistence on the sense of the presence and identity of corruption, which then embodies a need for menacing Manichaean adversary. Michaud used this model to generate suspense, a cinematic tension that fascinated audiences. Ironically, even though 10 Minutes to Live will interrogate the audience's need for a bad guy, Michaud structures the film's opening scenes so that they stimulate the audience's interest in identifying a villain. First, we are shown the image of a distressed black woman boarding a train, the glamorous Letha. A male voiceover poses the question, what mystery here? Why has this beautiful girl been put on the spot? The film proceeds to explain the scenes we have just seen. Initially jolted by a state of defamiliarization, the audience sees images that they know but do not understand the film context. Michaud works to establish film as a site for the production of narratives that we are structured to be more compelling than ordinary life. After all, race movies were like their Hollywood counterparts, about business. An audience had to be captivated so that they would return to see more. Using the camera to disrupt fixed notions of subject and place to create an aura of intrigue, Michaud aggressively insists that viewers be glued to their seats if they want to solve the mystery. His shooting of this scene is really technologically spectacular when viewed within the context of early film production. Disrupting the audience's capacity to read familiar signs, Michaud delights in the pleasure of manipulating excessively, subordinating everything to the narration. Though a race man eager to work for the uplift of black people, he refused to accept the notion that black cultural production should simply be a response to white representations of blackness and thereby only portray blackness in a positive light. Insisting on diversity and complexity of image, his films set an example. After the train scene, which opens the film in the middle of the story, strategically shifting the focus away from the linear narrative. Michaud breaks the convention and lets the audience know from the onset who the villain is, identified by a snapshot from a police blotter. The villain Marvin is described as, quote, 40, deaf, and mute, but cunning, formerly an actor known on the stage as the Escape King due to his ability to pick any lock, open any door, his lost voice and hearing about 5 years ago, and developed strange hallucinations. Lost his voice. And hearing about 5 years ago, developed strange hallucinations. Though appearing to identify the bad guy, this description does not really say what crimes have been committed. Presenting as official information, even though it says nothing specific, this representation undercuts the stereotype of the black male as criminal, hinting at the possibility that all representation is constructed and therefore subject to manipulation. Marvin as actor, and that nothing is as it appears. Unable to speak to or hear, Marvin must rely solely on sight as a means to perceive reality. Concurrently, since he has no voice, a symbolic mirroring of the voicelessness of black community and racist culture during the 1930s, he must think and feel through the body. Richard Dyer's critical assessment of Paul Robeson in Heavenly Bodies, Film Stars in Society, calls attention to the way representations of black folks in the white imagination are a site where the problem of the body is worked through. Quote, representations of blackness then function as a site of remembering and denying the inescapability of the body in the economy. Hence, on the one hand, the black body is a reminder of what the body can do, its vitality, its strength, its sensuousness, and yet simultaneously the denial of all that body energy and delight as creative and productive. Conversely, to subvert the negation of the black body that is imposed by white supremacy, representations by black people claim that creative potential, glorifying it. Even though the fair-skinned, handsome Marvin is the bad guy, his body is constructed as the object of a desiring black female gaze. Challenging dominant cinematic practices that position women as the object of male gaze, Michaud acknowledges female desire, exploiting it to create interest in Marvin's character. His body is excessively objectified, all the more so because he does not speak, asserting a masculine presence that is profoundly physical, embodying a sense of threat and menace. He is a seductive villain. Michaud both critiques and celebrates this black male physicality. Beginning his professional life as a Pullman porter, respectable employment, the train scene represents the inclusion in the film of his personal history. He is identified with that organization of black men who militantly resisted racist discrimination in the workforce. Yet Michaud knew all too well that it was easy within a racist society for black men to fall into disrepute, to end up like Marvin on the chain gang. It is only when the film is about to end that we learn from a letter Marvin's mother writes, rebuking him for persecuting the beautiful Letha, that he has been on the chain gang, a site where white domination over the black male body is expressed by excessive exploitation of their physical labor. Many chain gangs, composed solely of black men, did the arduous labor on railroads, laying tracks, making repairs. Michaud's inclusion of these historical references that would have been immediately understood by his audience situate representations of black male criminality in a social and political context, contesting notions of inherent biological propensity of evil perpetuated in racist ideology in white cinema. Even though Marvin is a sympathetic character, he is depicted as dangerous, exhibiting all the characteristics of the demon lover. He has returned to old haunts to kill the woman who betrays him by turning him over to the authorities. Robin Morgan's description of the deadly hero in Demon Lover could be a profile of Marvin. Quote, valorous, abnegating his own selfhood and served from that of others, disconnected from a living logic and the pathos of emotional commitments, recognizing only the redeeming ecstasy of a tragic death. The hero already lives as a dead man. As a dead man, he is fearless, because as a dead man, he is unconquerable. by any life force. Throughout 10 Minutes to Live, Marvin resurfaces as though from the dead. His inability to speak reinforces the sense that he has no ties with human community, as it is language that affirms this bonding. Able to express himself to others only by writing, he terrorizes Letha by sending her threatening messages, death warrants, to let her know that she is his prey, hunted by an old lover who intends to show no mercy, inverting the popular myth of embittered, revengeful womanhood betrayed and scorned by man. Michaud implies that it is really the black male personified by Marvin who will be betrayed and manipulated. In keeping with his critique of a color cast that sees the fair-skinned black woman as more desirable and worthy of love, Michaud's vamp Charlotte could pass for white. Jewish-American actress Theda Bara, whose real name was Theodosia Goodman, brought the image of the vamp to Hollywood and popularized it. Woman as Vamp was depicted as an adventurous, alluring, enticing, dangerous. Vamp was short for vampire. She had the power to seduce and destroy men. In Girls on Film, Julie Burchill critically examines the cinematic portrait of Woman as Vamp, emphasizing that this character was often portrayed as dark in contrast to white. Quote, the vamp was a beacon and a blessing in the cinema, the apex of what a woman on the screen can be. The vamp was beautiful and strong. She made helplessness, which previously and ever since has been the desirable norm for girls on film, look insipid and uninspiring. She came from nowhere and she walked alone. The vamp was a rhapsody and a revolution. Michaud offers the viewers images of woman as vamp and as helpless helpless damsel in distress through his juxtaposition of the characters Charlotte and Letha, again as though to counter the racism of mainstream cinema. His vamp is the fair-skinned white woman look-alike. Marvin's inability to distinguish between Charlotte and Leda, to know which woman is vamping and betraying him, is Michaud's way to once again problematize the question of representation and our capacity to know reality via the senses. How can we judge good and evil if so much that appears to be one thing is really the other? His answer, of course, is to sharpen the intensity and intensify one's capacity for perception, to learn to be more aware. See, early birds. That was a really good statement. Yeah, they may all look alike. Learn to be more aware. Employing diverse images of black womanhood, Michaud encourages audiences to resist the urge to construct a totalizing vision of woman, one that sees the female as embodying all that is evil, licentious, and morally corrupt. An advocate of rights for women, Michaud created a space in cinema where black women could be portrayed as desiring subjects. He countered the demeaning images of black femaleness in Hollywood cinema. In his films, black women's bodies are celebrated, plump or thin, light or dark. Though they were never too dark, they are sensual and desirable. That's a little hard on camera, isn't it? Careful in 10 Minutes to Live to distinguish between the image of woman as vamp, who uses her body as a seductive weapon to exert power over men, and the representation of a liberated image of the sensual, sexual black woman who is at home in her body, Michaud remains one of the few filmmakers to portray black women's bodies in a manner that does not invite a phallocentric, violating gaze. Without allying himself with idealized representations of innocent womanhood, he portrays Letha as a virtuous woman who is also glamorous and therefore desirable. In Living Dolls and Real Women, published in The Power of the Image, Annette offers this account of glamour's allure. Here's a quote. Glamour is understood generally to imply a sense of deceptive fascination, of groomed beauty, of charm enhanced by means of illusion. A glamorized image then is one manipulated, falsified, perhaps in order to heighten or even idealize. A glamorous image of a woman or an image of a glamorous woman is peculiarly powerful in that it plays on the desire of the spectator in a particularly pristine way. Beauty or sexuality is desirable to the extent that it is idealized and unattainable. My strong points. Michaud employs this notion of glamour in his representation of Letha. One of the longest scenes in 10 Minutes to Live shows Letha returning to her bedroom in a boarding house to change clothes. There, fully made up, gazing at herself in the mirror, her vanity table, all images that identify her as using cosmetics to create glamour. Attired in beautiful lingerie and dressing gown, she dresses for an evening out. Unself-consciously adorned, Letha maintains an aura of naivety, even though she is not innocent. That aura is not disrupted by the presence of Marvin, who has entered her space, violating her privacy, for she does not know that her integrity is threatened until the front door slams and he escapes. Fully adorned, the glamorous Letha meets her current dark-skinned male admirer, Anthony, in a nightclub. She shows him another terrorizing message from Marvin, one that says she has only 10 minutes to live. That they should go nightclubbing when her life is endangered seems outrageously melodramatic, yet Michaud's tactic is always to reproduce an image of the real in the context of the bizarre. Such is the nature of intrigue. It requires a combination of the ordinary and the fantastic. In his films, nightclubs are the perfect setting to introduce this mixture, representing as they do sites of transgression existing on the boundaries of morally sanctioned social life. Seeing nightclubs as non-hegemonic and non-homogeneous spaces where class caste barriers were crossed in the realm of pleasure, Jimenez comments, and here's the quote: "The song dance sequence in black films lifted the film out of social reality, relieved the tensions of having to maintain racial consciousness, and broke the chains of unrealistic narrative developments. The nightclub was a play space, a dystopia, not a space that was nowhere but disassociated, discontinuous realm." In 10 Minutes to Live, Michaud includes a song and dance sequence in the nightclub scene that at first glance seems in no way connected to the suspenseful drama. It is, however, as much a clue hinting at the film's subtext as any other scene in the movie. In the nightclub, Letha talks quietly to Anthony, encouraging him to wait, even though they are waiting for death. He replies, "Are you mad enough to think I'm going to sit here and let you, the woman I love, the woman I've always loved, be killed by this madman?" The melodramatic passionate declaration of its underlying eroticism can be expressed in the nightclub setting as the sexual tension it arouses. The desire can be displaced onto the dancers. Letha and Anthony's passionate talk is interrupted by the master of ceremonies announcement. "And now we introduce you to a little bit of the jungle, spirit of the jungle." Suddenly, skimpily dressed black women of all sizes and shades appear and begin to dance. Their body movements resemble those of Josephine Baker, calling attention to her breasts, legs, and asses. Yet this display does not evoke pornographic gazes from folks in the nightclub. It is presented not as exposure of the taboo sexuality, but as comfortable expression of bodily delight. Like Baker, Michaud sees the black body as a site where nakedness and eroticism are not considered shameful realities to be hidden and masked. Though the biography, Jazz Cleopatra, by Phyllis Rose, assaults Baker's life and work now and then, it offers tidbits of useful information. This is particularly so in passages that address Baker's theorizing of the body and its relation to eroticism. Attempting to describe Baker's sense of the body, particularly the rear end, and documenting Baker's words, Rose comments, here we quote: "She handled it as though it were an instrument, a rattling something apart from herself that she could shake. One can hardly overemphasize the importance of the rear end. Baker herself declared that people had been hiding their asses too long. The rear end exists. I see no reason to be ashamed of it. It's true that there are rear ends so stupid, so pretentious, so insignificant that they're good only for sitting on." With Baker's triumph, the erotic gaze of a nation moved downward. She had uncovered a new region for desire. Now, this is so interesting to me because of the comments that I have made about where do the clothes covering, where does it begin and where does it stop, right? I don't remember where I made that comment, probably in Bookless Classroom. So I say, no nakedness, but we were born naked. So are we supposed to be wearing a burqa? Is that what we're supposed to be wearing? What should be a jihab? I think that's what it's called. Is that what we should be wearing? Where does it stop? I don't want to see a man's junk. Doesn't do anything for me. I think there should be equality in that. That's the reason why I don't like the burqa jihad kind of thing, right? Because it's not fair. It's not equality. If I can control my sexual desires, yours are probably socially constructed as well. Look at what she's doing with that bare face. Look at her winking. Look at her with her tongue through that missing tooth. Stuff like that. In 10 Minutes to Live, Michaud includes a song and dance sequence. In the nightclub scene that at first glance seems to, I already read that. Rose lacks a knowledge of black culture that would enable her to decode the subtext of Baker's comments, as well as an informed perspective on race that would have enabled her to understand that asses have always been eroticized in black sexual iconography, that within black folk culture, the asses that are ridiculed and mocked are those of whites, called names like ironing board butts. I remember that in the 70s. This is all stuff from the set for sure. Because I was criticized because, as I've said before, my cousin was like, she's black. Look at her ass. Well, okay. Ironing board butt. You don't have an ass, you have a crack in your back, that kind of stuff. Hence, only the gaze of the white segment of the nation was transformed by Baker's assertion of bodily passion and dance. Though associated with the jungle, all the dancers, and then now take a look at what this has done. With Baker's triumph, the erotic gaze of a nation moved downward. She had uncovered a new region for desire. See, Kardashians. I saw one of those women on it. Come on. Those hips are from Egyptian mounds found in the Mayan region. Though associated with the jungle, all the dancers in Michaud's sequence are light-skinned, some white enough to pass. Yet by connecting this image with a jungle experience, he affirms an unbroken diasporic bond with Africa that has not been served by assimilation. Atavism, as expressed in the dance routine, glorifies the connection to Africa. As Dyer put it in his essay on Robeson, atavism is often rooted in the idea of the black race as a repository of uncontaminated feelings, though he acknowledges that the atavistic image in the white imagination is similar to that in black folk culture, as a sign it has different meanings in the black context. In the black imagination, atavism was primarily connected to a counter-hegemonic sense of history, wherein the African past, which white supremacy has taught blacks to despise, was now revered and seen as a site for the recovery of qualities and values held by one's ancestors. After the dancers evoke an avaticism that is about ancestor acknowledgement, Letha emphasizes her familial legacy. She explains to Anthony that she has received spiritual guidance from her mother in a dream. Quote, last night I dreamed of mother, my poor dear mother, who is dead. She came to me in my sleep and told me not to run away. Be calm, my baby. Place your trust in God. Something terrible is going to happen. Have faith, my daughter, have faith. Trusting in the wisdom of her mother, Letha refuses to listen to either the patriarchal voice that threatens or the one that encourages her to flee, offering to Anthony a paradigm for romantic love that is rooted in trust. Contrary to the Freudian conceptualization of subjectivity, wherein, as Jane Gallup describes it in Thinking Through the Body, quote, universal ambivalence toward the mother is made up of a universal primary attachment to the mother as nurture and universal disappointment in the mother. The show's drama suggests that it is only by maintaining a connection to the mother that is not tainted by suspicion that the adult child receives her unmediated wisdom and guidance. That is the sole fucking truth. I am not kidding you. You have got to stop tainting beautiful women who use all of their talents and skills that those women are sexy by any measure, period. And that goes for men. I've been thinking in my head a lot about this statement, and that is, if you see somebody working in their field that they belong with purpose and meaning and inspiration, that is sexy beyond belief. So I can understand why I would have to be guarded when you see me all the time as a woman doing what I do best. There is nothing sexier. Nothing sexier. Get that in film. Men and then get it in your lives. Men and women fulfilling their purpose and the love interest watching them. Nothing is sexier. I have to highlight that. Michelle's drama suggests that it is only by maintaining a connection to the mother that is not tainted by suspicion that the adult child receives her unmediated wisdom and guidance. There's no better sentence right there. Stop putting us on your pedestals and your narratives. Let us just be who we are, right? And you will be pleased in the home. And get all those leeches to leech onto something that is more meaningful to them, right? There are certainly most women are more sexually inclined than I am. So if that's your game, baby, go look for it someplace else. I'm not sexually inclined. It's just that I'm monogamous, and that's difficult to find. So monogamy with the right man is above sex. How about for you? Both Letha and Marvin are rescued after they listen to the mother's voices. The possibility of disappointment rests not with the mother, but with the child, who may lack the ability to recognize truth and therefore reality. Marvin's mother informs him in a letter that Charlotte is the vamp who has betrayed him for monetary rewards, even as she castigates him for being a fool. As in other Michaud films that have feminist implications, his representations of maleness challenge the patriarchal construction of masculinity as powerful and all-knowing. The men in 10 Minutes to Live lack insight. They can only apprehend the world fully, grasp the true nature of reality by learning from women. Letha and Marvin are spiritually renewed when they listen to the mother's voice. Escaping after he has revenged himself against Charlotte, Marvin writes a note of apology to Letha. This expression of regret enables him to reconnect with the human community. His representation as villain is mediated by this confession of wrongdoing. 10 Minutes to Live exploits all the conventions of simplistic melodrama, even as it interrogates on multiple levels issues of representation. Nothing appears on the screen to be as simplistic as it often seems in everyday life. The capacity of individuals to discern good and evil, to distinguish that which is desirable and that which threatens, is interrogated. Michaud lets the audience know how easily perceptions are manipulated. Representing the ultimate villain, Charlotte, who is white enough to pass, stands in contrast to the romantic, trusting lover, Anthony, who is dark-skinned. Michaud subtly urges black spectators to reevaluate the internalized racism that leads them to respect white or light skin and devalue blackness. Simultaneously, he urges us to claim the past symbolized by the body of the mother tongue, the motherland. It is a call for a celebration of blackness in all its diversity and complexity, for the level of collective self-recognition that bringing clarity and insight that allows for reunion and reconciliation. What an unbelievable chapter that is. That was chapter 8. We are all done with this week in our classroom. We will start on Tuesday, day 300. That's where we're starting on Tuesday, which will be January 20th. This weekend is Monday is our celebration of Martin Luther King. You might want to think about that in your 4 days off. I just think that this is a celebration right there of Martin Luther King Day. This is Dr. Annette Feravich. Happy birthday to you, my sister, Tony Marie, on the 19th. Happy birthday to my sister, Rhonda, because the 19th is Monday. Happy birthday to my sister, Rhonda, on the 24th. That is going to be a week. This is going to be Saturday. So a week from Saturday. Yeah, a week from Saturday on the 24th. All right, so if I don't get to it, there's your birthday wishes. That's what you're getting. I'm here in an apartment. My feet are cold because it was built on an ice rink. No, it's 11 degrees outside in Michigan. And I'm going to tell you, as a reminder, we haven't had it that cold in a while. And it is cold. It feels like -4 degrees. How about that? Thanks so much for joining me here in the reading room, where we are reading Black Looks by Bell Hooks. And boy, is that stretching the brain. That chapter 6 was chapter 7 was a real brain stretcher. A real brain stretcher on that Spectator. This one was an easy read. We're all done with day 299. We are all done with the week. Have fun on your 4 days off. I hope that you connect in ways that are important and meaningful to you. This is Dr. Why? Because here in the classroom, we are always for whatever makes your mind, your body, and your spirit healthier. Not always necessarily happier when you're doing the exercise that we did in Early Birds. I hurt my bottom. Thanks for joining me here in the classroom, where again, we're working.